For me, it is a little frustrating that people always assume that everything that could loosely be connected to BDSM is inherently sexual, because it isn't for a lot of us. For a lot of us, BDSM is sexy, but it's not necessarily sexual. So continuing on our series of videos about pride discourse, I thought that I would return to one of our favorite conversations over here on the katblaque channel, whether or not kink belongs at pride. And, as I said in my last video, I am trying to nope out of a lot of these conversations, not because I don't think that I have anything useful to say, but purely because I've been repeating myself for too long and I feel the need to move on to more productive things. I'm very excited to do that, especially through my shop. I've been publishing a bunch of nice, cute things, and I figured I would advertise this shirt in this video since it's relevant. This is a shirt that I wear to protect myself more than anything. It says that I am not a dom, just a goth. And you see, this is a different version than the one I've worn previously on here. It also has my politics on the back. That is something that I am proud to wear. And I feel like this is the shirt that everybody needs for the summer. All the hottest babes who often get accused of being doms, you need this for the summer. Go to katblaque.store to check that out. I will eventually be releasing prints. I'm working on building up my portfolio yet again, trying to get back into art. So yeah. Anyway, let's get into the discourse. And as usual, I'm going to be working on some art in this video as well.
This is going to be the one and only time that I address this because I am tired and done with this conversation. If you decide that you want to exclude leather and kink from pride celebrations, you are actively engaging with erasure of LGBTQI plus history, period. We've been here. We've always been here. We're going to keep being here.
So leather is a very large part of the LGBT community, and it's something that a lot of people don't understand. Leather is an LGBT tradition that has existed for quite some time, and it was especially important during the AIDS epidemic when people needed to figure out types of intimacy that they could share that wasn't necessarily sexual, that was indeed paraphilic. Every year, I make a point of going down to Folsom Street Fair, and Folsom Street Fair is a celebration of leather and BDSM, and as you guys know, I am in the BDSM community. Occasionally, you will see people who are engaged in leather at any of the various pride events around town. I really appreciate this creator, Buck Harder. Buck Harder is a boot black. Boot blacks are the people that make your shoes all shiny, and that's a very common leather thing. Part of leather is the maintaining of actual leather gear. A lot of times that is related to a fetish, but it's also power exchange, and it's not just sexy stuff too. I think that's another thing people don't understand. Usually people who are leather title holders are people who have actually contributed a lot to the community, people that have actually gone into the community and done some good work that is worth celebrating and talking about. And a lot of times it's well-deserved. And the leather community is a very, very large part of the advocacy that is done within the LGBT community. So leather definitely belongs at Pride. But this next video does bring up a question about children and whether or not certain things are acceptable at Pride because of the presence of them. So let's get into this particular one.
Hey guys, happy Pride. This is the only video I'm going to make about this month because we're not doing this. So I've ended at my first Pride Festival of the year this past weekend, and I posted this video about how somebody's kid was climbing on my table and grabbing the prints, and they had like, Cheeto dust on their fingers, and it was getting all over the stuff anyway. And a lot of people noticed that I have my Shibari stickers here on the display. So of course, this opened up the floodgates for discourse because there was a child at my booth and I sell Shibari art. Let me just start off by saying that sex positivity, kink, that has always been a part of Pride. That is not going away. This was not a youth pride event. This was a general community pride event. There were adults there. There were families there. Anybody could come to this event. This specific scenario that happened, this was a very little kid, maybe like 4 years old, and the mom was not watching her child. She was standing next to her child at the booth with me, but the kid was pulling things off the display and touching everything, and the mom was doing nothing. This is very common at events when you are vending. This is not just unique to Pride. And for a kid that young, if the parents are doing their job, she's not going to know what that is. I do not have anything anything explicit out on display when I'm vending at something that is open to the public like that. These were clothed characters in rope ties. Ideally, a young child is not going to know what that is. There were people at this Pride fair wearing their gear, leather harnesses, pup masks, things that are very typical for a Pride event, and little kids are not going to know what these things are and what they are for. Because things like shibari, masks, harnesses, those things on their own, they are not explicit. There were not public acts of intimacy happening at Pride. I was not the only vendor that was selling things meant for adults. There was a whole other booth selling adult toys. Pride is a sex-positive environment. I would be skeptical of a Pride event that did not market itself as specifically a youth Pride if they did not want people to express their sexuality how they would like. Pride is a place where you're supposed to be authentically you for unapologetic expression, and it is not supposed to be palatable. If you would bring your kid to Pride that is not marketed as a youth Pride, be prepared to have age-appropriate discussions with them. You don't have to get into details. You could say that's something for grown-ups. 90% of the time, when we are applying to vend at these events, they are juried. There's somebody that looks through what we are going to sell, and they have to approve our application. The organizers know what we are selling, and we were approved to sell them. If you do not want to see unconventional sexual expression or sex positivity, I don't recommend you go to a Pride event because it's going to be there. Pride is about sexuality. You do not have to stay near my booth or the other booths that are selling things for adults, but you do have to be okay with the fact that it is there. There are youth Pride events. If there isn't a youth Pride in your area, organize to create one. These events are specifically for minors, and there will not be adult content because it is catered to minors. These are spaces that are made specifically for kids. That is not what regular Pride is. We cannot sanitize Pride. Go ahead and bring your kids to Pride, but please make sure you are watching them and be prepared to have conversations with them. It is not my job to keep your kid away from my booth if you do not want your kid at my booth. It is my job to show up for my community and express myself through art and to celebrate that with people. Pride is not a daycare.
So I thought that this video was fascinating for a few different reasons, but I agree with this artist who says that Pride is not a daycare, because here's the thing. My very first Pride that I went to, I've talked about this on here very publicly, I did gag at the porn. I did gag. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Why is there porn there? And the longer I've been going to some of these events, the more it started to make sense to me, right? Like, the reality is Pride is supposed to be a political event, and the idea that it's supposed to be this like family-friendly affair is kind of out of step, right? Because as they say in this video, there are appropriate festivals, there are appropriate spaces, there are specifically youth-based Pride events. Now, some people may think like, okay, why do kids need to be at Pride? And I think there's probably some people in the audience who are like, why do kids need to be at Pride? Why are there kids at Pride? Well, there are kids at Pride because some of these kids have gay parents. A lot of times, gay families will bring their kids to Pride, and some Pride celebrations are about celebrating families. Not to mention, there's definitely also a class of LGBT folks who don't really want to be at the raucous Pride event. Like, they just would rather be at an event where things are more relaxed and chill. I think that you are responsible for your children. I have to be frank with you. As a person who was raised very sheltered, I am fascinated by how people have started to treat everyone else like they're supposed to be responsible for your kids. That's fascinating to me because I remember the amount of work my parents put into protecting me, making sure that I wasn't gaining access to certain things, you know? When I was a kid, it was kind of annoying, but in retrospect, they were trying to protect me and take care of me. And I think that you have to be aware of the fact that if you take your kid to a Pride festival, they're probably going to see some people being gay. They're probably going to see some shibari shit. Now, as you guys know, I am a rope bottom. I've done several shibari photo shoots. I think by the time this video goes out, I will have made a post on my blog about that. But shibari is something that for me is not inherently sexual. It is creative. It is artsy. It is certainly not sexual for myself and the photographer that I shoot it with. It is art. And I love making art with my friend. I love making art. I love being creative. It is something that does drive me. There are people who do enjoy rope in a sexual way, but rope is not entirely sexual or exclusively sexual. They mentioned pup hoods and the concept of kids not being able to recognize that. Pup hoods, yeah, there might be a sexual connotation with that. A lot of times, pup play is not really about sex, it's more about this sort of like depersonalized, almost dehumanized sort of escapist play where someone gets to escape into the role of an animal and be a good submissive doggy or sometimes a bratty doggy. It's role play and fun. It's not necessarily about sex for a lot of people. Of course, there are people who do get down in their pup hoods, but it's not inherently sexual. For a lot of kids, all they're going to really see is a dog mask made out of leather. I made a video a few years ago responding to Blaire White, who made a video about pup play. If you guys are curious, it definitely is something that is very commonly misunderstood, and I will not pretend like I know everything about it, but I know that it is not what a lot of people tend to assume of it. For me, it is a little frustrating that people always assume that everything that could loosely be connected to BDSM is inherently sexual, because it isn't for a lot of us. For a lot of us, BDSM is sexy, but it's not necessarily sexual. For leather, it is very common for people to be in a leather dynamic that is not sexual. For a lot of people, it's about power exchange, a love of leather, escapist fun, and role play. For a lot of people, they find community within the leather community. They find community within the BDSM community. If you live in Los Angeles, I organize a group called LA Kinky Weirdos. We are a monthly gathering that meets every second Thursday at Untamed Spirits in Silver Lake. If you ever want to connect with the local BDSM community, the inclusive BDSM community, that is one of the best places for you to go. I am a little biased, but I strive to create a space where the marginalized minorities who are within the scene feel as if they can come make friends and gain community. And for me, that is very important. Have leather folks who have been wanting for me to be involved in the leather community. And who knows, maybe one day. I just want for people to recognize that your assumptions of BDSM are not always what they actually are. And yes, while there are plenty of gay people who are not into all that weird whips and chains bullshit, BDSM and the organizing that is done by the people who build things around the BDSM community goes hand in hand. A lot of people who are organizers within the BDSM community are also organizers outside of the BDSM community. For me, it's always been about creating a network of people, of mutual support and aid. We do mutual aid occasionally through the group that I run. So I think it's really important for us right now to not censor pride and not make pride this thing that is even more corporate, especially as these billionaires try to control every waking moment of our lives. We need to reaffirm that pride is a protest, especially during a time when many of us are on the receiving end of violence at the hands of the state. I wanted to share my thoughts and perspective on kink and pride discourse. Give me your comment below in the comment box. I would especially love to hear from people within the leather community about the friction that you've experienced at pride events and also what you've done within the community as a person in leather. I will talk to you guys later. Also, check out my video that I did about Folsom Street Fair. I will put that on this video. Check out my store, katblaque.store. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. I want you guys to stay hot and introspective, and always remember, never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.